Hello everyone and welcome. This is Jonathan Sanford, and for the next 10 minutes, stick around as we review all of Week 6 action here in the LCOC Fantasy Football League, sponsored by Yahoo Sports. Well, guys, before we get to our week number 6 matchups, let me start by saying what an incredible, unprecedented week it was for the LCOC Fantasy Football League. 7 players going over the 100-point threshold, and not just going over that threshold, but blowing it away. 175 points, the highest point total this past weekend. Just an absolute tremendous weekend for a lot of players. And if you think about it, out of the 10 players that are in this league, 7 players going over that 100-point threshold, unprecedented for our league, so stick around as we look at the week number 6 matchups. Our first matchup recap of week number 6 pits the number 7th ranked number 1 Cowboys fan of Danny Balch against the number 3 ranked America's team of Daniel Balch, his father and son, in week number 6. But the name of the week has to be Tom Brady. In the second quarter, the New England Patriots, under the helm of Tom Brady at quarterback, put up 5 passing touchdowns, an overall point total of 60 fantasy points for Tom Brady, and then Wes Welker, 32 points. Both of these players belong to none other than Danny Balch, and Danny Balch's number 1 Cowboys fan team put up a historic performance, going for 164.80 to America's team 94.75. America's team, Daniel Balch, had a real tough weekend. He was one of only 3 teams that did not cross that 100-point threshold. Tough break for Daniel Balch's America's team. We'll talk about the point standings here in just a few moments, but let's move on with matchup number 2. Well, now we turn our attention to the Week 6 matchup between the 6th-ranked team, Love Ya Blue, owned by Tommy Carey, versus the 9th-ranked team of SOS, owned by Walden David. Would it be that Tommy Carey could stretch that winning streak to 4? Yes, it would be. 137.70 to 26.70, your final score here in this matchup. Hines Ward, Rashard Mendenhall, Brett Favre, just all putting on a great day's performance for the team of Love Ya Blue. But here's the interesting note about this matchup. It was not so much the matchup between himself and Walden David, but the point total and the thought early in the day on Sunday that this would be one of the, if not the highest point total of the weekend, but it ended up only being the top 5 of point totals, as the rest of the day held some incredible statistical performances by other competitors here in the LCOC Fantasy Football League. But hats off to the team of Love Ya Blue and Tommy Carey. Congratulations on moving to that winning streak of 4 games and an overall record of 4-2. That's a big turnaround, folks. Let's now look at our number 3 matchup of the weekend. In what was no doubt the surprise outcome of week number 6, it was going to be the 8th-ranked team, Corley's team of Michael Corley, versus the number 5-ranked team, the Hornets of Shannon Smith, going down in a historic fashion. This matchup would be one for the record books, especially for the Hornets of Shannon Smith, putting up a point total, listen to this, 175.65 for the Hornets, on the back of a great performance between Drew Brees and Randy Moss. Earlier in the week, we talked about Drew Brees going against the New York Giant defense. I mentioned that defensive secondary was subpar. I gave them too much credit. They were not just subpar, they were downright awful, and Drew Brees ate them alive. But for Corley's team, Michael Corley should not be completely devastated. No, on the record, he drops to a season record of 2-4, while the Hornets moved to 4-2. But Michael's team, 104.10. That's not a bad point total by any means. It just so happened he ran into the bulldozer called the Hornets this weekend. So that was a tough matchup for Michael Corley's, the Corley's team. Not all hope is lost for that team, as now we move at the halfway point in the season. Now let's take a look at our 4th matchup of week number 6. And now we take a look at the matchup between the number 2-ranked Crimson Tide of Jonathan Sanford, that's myself, versus the 10th-ranked team, the Texas Aggies of Bradley Mattier. Brad taking over the Texas Aggies in week number 5, did an impressive job with them. Would he upset the number 2-ranked Tide? Well, he would come up just a bit short. The final total's 118 even to 99.25. 118 for the Tide, 99.25 for the Aggies. Still a good good performance for Bradley Matyear's team here in his second week of ownership. The Tide now moves on to the record of 5-1. The Aggies drop to the record of 0-6. However, the Aggies going to get a little bit of a break over the next couple of weeks. We'll talk about that later on. But that was your fourth matchup of the week, the Tide versus the Aggies. And now we'll move on to the pinnacle matchup of week number 6, our fifth matchup. Perhaps the most contested matchup and most hyped matchup of week number 6 would be the matchup between the number 4 ranked Mamas United, owned by Jennifer Sanford, versus the number 1 team of the land, the Pain Train of Cody Smith. Coming into this week 6 matchup, the projected point totals had the Mamas United team upsetting the number 1 team of the land, but it would be that Pain Train would keep on trucking down the tracks as he comes in with a point total of 156.25 to Jennifer's Mamas United 153.90. Now, let's talk about the game changer, the Monday Night Football situation. It came into the Monday Night Football performance. Darian Sproles, owned by Cody Smith, had to put up 4 or more points in this matchup to overtake Mamas United. Mamas United players already completing their point totals on Sunday. 1 player left for the Pain Train, Darian Sproles. Now, coming into this game, Darian Sproles not projected to do too well, but it was one play that changed the outcome of this matchup, a punt return in the second quarter of the matchup between the Chargers and the Broncos. Darian Sproles taking that ball to the yard and putting up 6.40 points in the process. Darian Sproles, the important link in the team for the Pain Train here in Week 6, taking that win over Mamas United, and that's going to move Pain Train to 5-1, holds on to that top spot, and will drop Mamas United to 3-3 on the season. So that ends our matchups here in week number 6. We're going to talk about the point standings and next week's schedule here in just a few moments. Now that the final horn has sounded on week number 6, after the matchups have been reviewed, here are your standings here in the LCOC Fantasy Football League. The Pain Train of Cody Smith still in first place. The Tide in second. Both of those teams with records of 5-1. The tiebreaker is broken by the point totals, which Cody Smith certainly has a good advantage there over the Tide. Then in the third spot, it's the Hornets of Shannon Smith, record of 4-2. Love Ya Blue. Talk about a great story here. Tommy Carey's team all the way up to the 4th spot with a record of 4-2, a 4-game winning streak for that team. The number 1 Cowboys fan who had kind of become a bottom dweller here over the last couple of weeks, all the way up to the 5th spot with a record now of 3-3. Congratulations to Danny Balch on moving back up in the standings, now that 3-3 slot. Mamas United, tough break as she falls all the way down in the standings to the 6th spot now with a record of 3-3, and you have to imagine just a couple of weeks ago up there in the top 3. So a couple of weeks can change things for any team, so keep that in mind. Even if you're back in the back of the standings or up front, a couple of weeks can change things quite dramatically. America's team, Daniel Balch, up there in the 3rd spot last week in the standings coming into week number 6, finds himself all the way back now in the 7th spot in our point standings. Then following that is Corley's team, SOS, and the Texas Aggies. So those are the top 10 here in the LCOC Fantasy Football League. Congratulations to the folks that moved up in the standings. If you fell behind this week, do not be totally discouraged. There's still a lot of time to come. We're coming up on week 7, the halfway point here, and now we're going to take a look at the week number 7 matchups in just a moment. Well, quickly, as our time is running out here on the LCOC Fantasy Football Week in Review, it's the pinnacle matchup of week number 7, the halfway point here in our league, the Pain Train of Cody Smith versus the number 2 ranked Crimson Tide, owned by myself. Then you're going to take a look at the matchup between Love Ya Blue of Tommy Carey and the Hornets of Shannon Smith. The SOS team of Walden David versus the Texas Aggies of Bradley Matyear. Bradley gets in the last game of the first half and the first game of the second half of the season, so that's a really needed matchup over the next couple of weeks for the Texas Aggies. Then it's Corley's team versus number 1 Cowboys fan, and Mamas United versus America's team. Those are the matchups for week number 7. We'll talk about those matchups midway through the week here as we get set for week number 7. So folks, have a great week. God bless you, and hope you're enjoying your time with the LCOC Fantasy Football League, and hope you're enjoying these reviews here by myself. Thank you, and have a great day.